want to thank Mufti and their amazing team for organizing this event. Also, thanks to His Royal Highness for his vision in initiating this IPP project. Before we start our conversation today, I would like to share a little bit background and recap of what Mehdi said about Iran's history and with water and environment, because it helps us to understand how serious the situation is and become. Before 1979, Iran was building a strong foundation to protect its environment and water resources. In fact, Iran was the first country in the Middle East to establish a Department of Environment. At the same time, the countries like United States, Canada, France, UK was creating their own agencies to protect their environment. At the same time, in Iran, we had an international convention called Ramsar Convention, which led to the first global treaty focusing to protect the wetlands. This shows that back then in 1970s, when Iran was a leader in these activities in the region, it was not only thinking about protecting its own environment, but also contributing to the global discussion in this regard. I would like to even go further back and discuss about our history. You know, water has a very high place in Iranian culture. We even have a month called after name in honor of the water called Aban. And we know that ancient Iranians developed advanced systems like canals to manage the water in the arid region of central Iran. Even the famous Greek historian Herodotus mentioning that writing 2,500 years ago that Iranians consider it unacceptable to pollute water and they honor rivers as sacred. So I want to ask the first question from Shirin. Shirin, when we look at this long history and when we remember the good progress Iran was making in 1970s, it's very important to ask what happened over the past 4 decades to change this path and how a country with such a strong history and culture of protecting water and environment facing one of the world's worst water crises in history.
Sure, yeah. Good afternoon, and thank you, Mufti, and the amazing IPP team for putting together such a timely and important initiative. So to get to the question, I think to evaluate or talk about what has happened over the last 4 decades for our water management system or the environment as a whole, it's very essential for us to acknowledge the Islamic Republic for what it truly is. And it was also discussed, I think, several times in the previous panels as well, that the Islamic Republic is not simply a government making mistakes, like in terms of environment, is not simply a government making environmental mistakes. It's a fundamentally ideological system that treats Iran's people, land, water, and all resources as expendable tools to expand its ideology and maintain power at any cost. So as you mentioned, before 1979, Iran was actually establishing a strong foundation for sustainably manage its water resources. The country had begun studying its watersheds, modernizing the agriculture and irrigation system, cooperating and learning from leading experts internationally, and promoting environmental education and environmental literacy inside the country. The focus of planning and policy making was to ensure the territorial survival of the country and protecting its precious resources for the future generations to come. Of course, even under democratic governance, we would still have environmental challenges, as most places in the world, with the population growth and climate changes. But the important point is that with responsible planning, the country would have the chance to be prepared for these challenges and build adaptation and resiliency plans in advance. So the plans that would be based on expertise, science, and collaboration with other regions of the world that are facing similar challenges. And that was the past for Iran before 1979. But after the Islamic Revolution, everything changed. The regime's priorities were never about the environment in Iran or well-being of the Iranian people. They were about spreading their ideological agenda over the region or even globally and maintaining power. And water management decisions, as a result, were taken away from scientists and experts and handed over to political appointees, regime insiders, and security forces. And experts and scientists who disagreed with this system of governance or tried to warn about the future of the water resources in Iran were often silenced or dismissed or even imprisoned. And Iran's water crisis at the moment is a natural result of a political system that prioritizes ideology over nations' well-being and has systematically sacrificed our valuable resources for its own agenda. And I think before we recognize this fact, any technical solutions that's provided for water crisis in Iran, which is, as you mentioned, not among the most severe water crisis situations, not only regionally, but even globally, would be like putting a bandage over a very deep wound without treating the main cause.
I'm gonna ask Mehdi the same question, but before that, just some people, when they hear about the environmental problems like drought, like mismanagement, or groundwater depletion, they might assume that these are just the results of the natural causes or poor management of the one portion of the system, and it's easy to think that just importing technology or just some changes in the management and reform can resolve the situation and fix the problem. But you argued that Iran's the real issue goes much deeper, right? And the very nature of the Islamic Republic itself is a major cause of the water crisis in Iran. Can you a bit elaborate on this and why this political reality is important when we talk about Iran's water crisis?
Sure. So yeah, as you mentioned, some might think that the water crisis in Iran or the environmental collapse in Iran is a result of poor planning or old infrastructure or outdated technology. And while all of these factors are contributing to the problem, the main root cause of the issue is as I mentioned, the ideological structure of the Islamic Republic, which is written in the constitution. As Mehdi mentioned in his remarks, Articles 3 and 43, for example, are mandating the economy to cut dependence on foreign powers, especially in terms of food and basic needs, basic goods. So when we look at the agriculture right now at the country, which consumes the biggest portion of the water resources, more than 90% of our water resources goes to agriculture, that's the reason where it comes from, the ideology behind it, the policy behind it is for these long-standing obsession of the Islamic Republic for food self-sufficiency. That's even written in the constitution. And the policy is not based on environmental logic or agricultural science. It's just based on a deep ideological fear of the Islamic Republic from international cooperation, which they call dependence. And as a result, we see massive expansion of farming into the arid and semi-arid regions of Iran, which can't sustain this, like neither the land or the water cannot sustain this level of agriculture, like what happened to Lake Urumia. But still, yeah, we are witnessing that, and we are seeing like groundwater depletion, lakes and rivers drying up as a result of this.
Please.
Yeah, so just to add up some great points that Dr. Goli just mentioned here. So when we compare the current system to the previous system, it does not mean that the previous system was error-free. So, but the difference here is that the previous system was normal. Any normal systems can make mistakes. So when, for example, we tell that the number of dams, for example, one of the reasons that right now we are a water bankrupt nation is the number of dams that created after the revolution. The number of major dams that created after the revolution is around 150. Before the revolution, it was 20. Some of the dams that were created after the revolution, their plannings goes to before the revolution. But there's a big but here. The but here is that the role model of Iran was the Western United States. The knowledge, or the, let's say, the base knowledge of water resources management in that era was based on structural solutions. The United States changed that structural solutions in the 80s. Once we wanted to change that path, Islamic Revolution happened. So we need to emphasize those differences just to make sure that we are aware of the current system in comparison to the previous system. And if we want to go beyond that, we can give some examples. I can give you a very, very bold example. So recently, I know some of you may heard that a few weeks ago, the water transfer pipes that were coming from Isfahan to Yazd were broken by the farmers in Isfahan. The reason was that, yeah, they wanted their water rights not to go to Yazd for drinking water purposes and also for industrial purposes to Yazd. How we came here? Let's go back to 1981. In 1981, the Fulad Mubarak Steel Company was transferred from Bandar Abbas to Isfahan. The Fulad Mubarak company was supposed to develop in Bandar Abbas before the revolution. First, because Fulad Mubarak Steel Company is a water-intensive company, and then second, because we can't desalinate water when we are near the Persian Gulf. Following that, in the 80s and 90s, there were massive water transfers from Char Mahal Bakhtiyari to Isfahan, from Char Mahal Bakhtiyari to Yazd. Initially just for drinking water purposes, but then for agricultural purposes. Then for creating more industrial purposes in the water scarce land of Isfahan and Yazd. So what happened after that? The expectation rised. There were some kind of illusion of free water or cheap water in Isfahan, in Yazd, for farmers and for industrial activities. Can we blame those farmers? Absolutely no. Can we even blame those industrial activities? Absolutely no. That was the only result of bad policies, bad governance policies, which was rooted in satisfying the short-term goals of farmers in those areas, or the short-term goals of some water mafias, I can say, in those areas. This has been just one of the very small portion example of what happened to our country during the last 46 years.
And sorry, I wanted to add a point just to the great point that you brought up about dam building. So correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Islamic Republic has constructed like around 150 dams over the last 4 decades, right?
Major dams, yeah, not the smaller ones.
Yeah,
we can just.
And then before that, we had around like 20, right?
20, right.
So we have gone through like dam building frenzy over the last 4 decades. And if we look at the results, like were those dams really studied and needed? The answer is mostly no. So there are no real environmental assessments for constructing these dams. And the main reasons behind going with these massive projects would be, first, they look like development to the public, and then they are providing massive sources of profit and corruption for the contractors, which are basically and mainly tied to IRGC or its construction arm, Khatam al-Anbiya. So we are not dealing only with mismanagement, we are dealing with a regime that promotes destruction even when it benefits them. Yeah, so.
Just to follow up your point. So we have expression in Persian that we say that Sutun ba sutun faraj ast. I'm not sure how we can translate that in English. It would be a ridiculous translation. From one beam to another beam, there's always an opportunity. So we have seen the translation of this expression in real policy in Iran, in economy in Iran, in cultural issues in Iran, and also in water resources management in Iran. For example, let's satisfy I'm just saying from the government standpoint. Let's satisfy, for example, the farmers this summer. Let's see the next summer what would happen. We don't care at this point. Let's satisfy, for example, the drinking water issues this summer. Next summer, who is alive, who is dead, for example. But these are some institutional problems. These are not some management problems that we can, for example, deal with changing some managers with another manager. Change with, for example, changing the structure of just one ministry to another ministry. These are some policy making at a higher level that we need to tackle those.
You both defined the problem. Some maybe, I know it's a very vast topic to discuss, just the headlines of the, what is the main problem in Iran. But let's for the rest of the panel, let's focus on future. Let's imagine a future where Iran transitions to a free and democratic system that is based on science, based on transparency. Crown Prince mentioned that transparency is something is really very important in our country, and participation of its citizens another aspect. In such future, after so many years of the environmental damage, do you believe Iran can rebuild its environment and water resources?
I think we were not here if we didn't believe that. So we are here because we believe in our future and because we care about the future. So there have been, on the governance level, governance water level, there have been several structural issues. First, self-sufficiency, definitely some ideological policies of self-sufficiency that we just discussed. And then no engagement of stakeholders in decision-making, no engagement of people in decision-making. If there was a water transfer, for example, from Charm al-Bakhtiyari to Isfahan, they didn't ask the people of Charm al-Bakhtiyari if you are comfortable with that. If there was another transfer from Zayanderud to Yazd, they didn't ask the people of Zayanderud or the Zayanderud basin living in those areas to ask their thought about the industrial activities that they are transferring water from Isfahan to Yazd for that purposes. They didn't ask those questions because we do not have those fundamental structures to be able to ask those questions. And then we have another fundamental issue, conflicts of interest among our agencies. So we have Minister of Energy. Minister of Energy is the sole responsible for controlling and for selling water resources. The interesting point here is that the ministry that can handle the entire aspects of water resources does not take any responsibility or accountability for recovery of water resources or reclamation of water resources. Who is responsible for that? Department of Environment. So Department of Environment is accountable, but is not responsible. And Minister of Energy is responsible, but is not accountable. So this right now, And we cannot right now blame, for example, the Minister of Energy for the Department of Environment, because we have some fundamental structural issues. After the collapse of the regime, I'm not saying that, for example, 6 months after the collapse of the regime or 1 year after the collapse of the regime, water issues are not like water policies. We cannot change those overnight, or we cannot recover our water resources overnight. But we need to tackle this institutional problem that we have in terms of our organizations, in terms of our ministries.
So in just very short term, what actions needs to be done? Of course, I know that we all of us know that infrastructure development and these kinds of projects needs maybe a few years to with correct oversight and investment to be developed and happen. But in short term, what we can do in short term immediately after the collapse of the regime?
So, great point. In short term, as I mentioned, there is no overnight solution. But we need to do two things, first of all. First, we need to build trust between our politicians and the people to ensure that the people are aware of a path forward. And why? Why we need to build this trust? Because of several reasons, including we need to make sure that we can establish a secure Iran. Why establishing secure Iran? Why we care about the secure Iran for water resources? Because of the so many problems that we have, we are going to have some kind of legacy problems from the previous regime, I mean the Islamic Republics. Just imagine that after, for example, 6 months after the collapse of the regime, we are going to have a less secure Iran, even compared to today. You saw just a few weeks ago that the farmers of Isfahan broke the water transfer pipes from Isfahan to Yazd. We have so many conflicts, similar conflicts, for example, in Khuzestan. We have similar conflicts right now in Urmia Lake. We have similar problems, similar conflicts, even in the northern part of Iran, where we think that, yeah, for example, we think that there is no problem over there, but there are water resources problem over there. We have so many conflicts. So just imagine that in a situation that we have insecurity, what would happen to our water resources, structural problems? One broken pipe can be converted to 100 broken pipes after collapse of the regime if there is no trust between the politicians and the people. People should be able to trust the politicians in the transitional government.
On another topic, Dr. Goli, I know that also you mentioned about collaboration with other countries and how the nature of this regime doesn't let the collaboration to happen. And so, considering this, I want to add also this: in the past, Iran used to work closely with other countries. Eyal in previous security panel mentioned that there was lots of the collaboration between Israel and Iran. And with Iran and other countries, and regarding to issues like water management and other environmental fields. And we know that today countries like Israel and United States are they made incredible advancements in water reuse, precision agriculture, and also integrated water management systems. If Iran opens up again to the international community, what opportunities do you see for collaboration and technology transfer to Iran, and how these type of and kind of the partnerships can lead Iran to a prosperous country and modern country?
Sure, yeah, I believe that Iran could tremendously benefit from international cooperation in terms of addressing its environmental issues. And as you mentioned, like before 1979, we had a strong cooperation and relationships with countries that were pioneers in water management and like water treatment, water reuse, like Israel and the United States. And as Eyal also mentioned in the previous section, there were too many Israeli engineers and technicians helping us. For example, in Qazvin, we had like a school teaching Hebrew for the kids of and families of the Israeli engineers and technicians helping us with the water problem there after an earthquake that happened there.
This was before the revolution, 1990.
Sure, yeah, of course, yeah. So, yeah, but after the revolution, the regime's ideology of self-reliance and like the fear of foreign influence and their like core ideological beliefs of opposing, you know, like the countries that are very advanced in water management and like technologies in water reuse. For example, Israel is recycling almost 90% of its wastewater for the use in agriculture, has developed advanced technologies for irrigation, smart irrigation, along with an integrated water management system. Or United States has a very advanced and strong water governance systems and advanced aquifer management, stormwater capture, and climate resilience planning. So sure, yeah, we don't need to reinvent the wheel for like similar situations, similar problems, with the similarities between the regions. Same, you know, environmental challenges happen for the same regions, for similar regions, and we can definitely use the experience, the knowledge transfer, and technology transfer of these advanced countries. Also, to add to that, Iran, I believe, is a very rich country, not only in terms of natural resources, but in terms of human talents. Human talent, engineer expertise, and historical knowledge of sustainable living. And we can once again contribute to the world community of science and global water innovation.
Dr. Ketabchy, would you like to add anything to this topic?
So in terms of the international cooperation, first of all, we need to ensure a very, very specific point. A comparison between the current system and the future system. The current system in international relations prioritizes ideological interest over national interest, or either for international cooperations or either for transboundary water resources. By transboundary water resources, I mean, for example, the Hamun Lake, or even the Caspian Sea, or the problems of the dust storms that we have right now in Khuzestan, all throughout the years. In the future, the point here is that water sector cannot be seen just as one sector with respect to technical issues or technical aspects. It's interrelated with other sectors in Iran, with foreign policy, with economy, with our identity, even with our identity, and with other sectors. As long as we cannot solve other sectors after the collapse of the regime, the water sectors or even the technical solutions for the water sector cannot be solved easily or addressed easily.
Amazing. Yeah. I've been told that our time is up, so thank you very much. It was an honor being with you. I appreciate it.